Hello people, today I'd like to talk about self-betrayal, amnesia and narcissism. We'll start with children, as I've already spoken about. Children have a healthy narcissism as a child, which is basically the formation of boundaries in being a sovereign human being, and also to be able to engender the respect of their environment as a human being. Children who go through any types of trauma, be it emotional, physical or sexual, will have a tendency within this healthy narcissism to blame themselves for the occurrences, as they can't compute how they may happen in the environment without it deeply affecting their psychology. So the amnesia is a form of self-security, a switch that turns off. But within that switch, the child will engender a sensation of self-betrayal through this narcissistic mechanism, in that if it happened to them, they caused it, and somehow they must deserve it. And this is the beginnings of the patterns that would create the fawning amnesia that I've been speaking about. Self-betrayal is the abnegation of self, usually in the face of unwinnable odds, but it's a sliding scale in which, once that mechanism has been achieved in the mind of self-abandonment, that child will be more inclined to use that mechanism to escape any feeling similar to that moving forward. It's a very difficult one because no is the first word a child will use, and it's the one that it needs to be heard. It's the first defense mechanism a child's really got, and when parents start to cajole or minimize or ignore the no itself, the child will start to malform. It doesn't feel safe in its own experience, and therefore will start to become environmentally focused to receive direction. The way I see this society is set up from the way parents are taught to indoctrinate their children, because I don't see indoctrination and education as any different really. It's just two different words with the same meaning and assigned meaning, and splitting hairs, but the feelings are very different when you consider it. When you're forced to be a certain way without question, you're going to stop questioning, and then you're going to start to recognize that approval comes from the nod of doing what you're told and saying what's meant to be said. Here I see the influenza of this next generation of children who've been indoctrinated, believing that they're free, indoctrinating other people with their propaganda around what they haven't healed themselves, and creating an ego where self-betrayal is not their thing because they're up the top, but the capacity to self-betray by not seeing it from all points and building a following is asking others to self-betray who have also experienced this need to look out experience of I don't know what's going on here, and I need to look elsewhere for information to find surety. Yeah, it cost me $888 for those 2 words. It was one of my biggest breakthroughs in the amnesia, was self-betrayal. I'd been doing a course, funnily enough, as I'm speaking, with a very narcissistic woman who was talking about narcissistic abuse recovery amongst other things, who managed to herald me in one moment and tell me I was unfixable in the next. But so I didn't finish that course. But as soon as I got to the point of self-betrayal, I realised that I was doing it again in the course with this lady. And the only thing that I hadn't learnt were those 2 words in 52 years, because that's what I grew up on. That was my staple diet. That was how the handlers trained me to self-betray more. So, yes, once again, learning from narcissists what I need to learn, and the most valuable 2 words in my recovery coming from the enemy, and I do learn a lot from these people when I listen. I really do. She subsequently freaked out when I started to peel her apart on a website, asking her the questions that made her shriek. Interesting. But yeah, self-betrayal. Self-betrayal is having to go back to where you don't want to go. Self-betrayal is saying yes when you mean no. Self-betrayal is knowing something's wrong and not speaking about it. Self-betrayal is turning the other cheek to someone who's being rude to you. There is no better man in a situation of conflict. There is a point of resolution and finality. It's never pleasant. But people who don't follow the social norm and be normal will be seen as all sorts of different things, because they are still dynamic, because they're not prepared to self-betray for the sake of equanimity and popularity and following, which is ironically creates a following of real people who feel similarly and can actually grow something from this, rather than having numbers and some inflated ego about, look how many people are listening to my propaganda. Because at a certain point, I think with these people, it's not about the story, it's about them, as we've seen so many times. Ego takes over and it all gets a little loopy. So yeah, self-betrayal. The whole 2020 thing was a exercise in self-betrayal. And here's where I'll step into the narcissist realm, is that every time the narcissist sees you self-betrayal, they log it, because they know that you are losing your inner voice, you are losing your connection to spirit and intuition. And every time you consent to self-betrayal, they know you're getting weaker as they get stronger. It's as simple as that. This pandemic horseshit, all the fear campaigning and mandatory and laws were just absolutely ridiculous. They were stupid just to look at the start. But the level of compliance would show the level of betrayal in humanity by virtue of the loss of conscience and logic in a situation of stress that would have them comply to ridiculous sanctions in order for the powers that be to recognise what sort of pushback they're going to have while essentially defrauding people into illness disguised as assistance. This is narcissism 101. It's the love that you get through the concern and care that will eventually destroy you. Because it's not love. It's not care. And anything that's given under the guise of love that isn't love is probably poison. So yeah, self-betrayal. When a person heals enough to stop self-betraying, it gets even harder because there is an old self that is left behind that everybody knows and assumes to be current, and would also option the want for that to be the case because it's more convenient and more easy to read, and anyone who's in change will be seen often as or labelled as this or that, because change is often spoken about a lot and done very little. It's a influenza call of change, and unless it's enacted, it's talk. It's not change, it's talking. So yeah, self-betrayal is insidious and it's cumulative, and it can be camouflaged within the person, within the deliverer, as some form of moralism or humility, and what they're just smear words for self-betrayal, self-abandonment. I don't really believe that Jesus ever said in the Bible, turn the other cheek when someone slaps you, because he wasn't an idiot. Someone slaps you, you defend yourself. That's what you do. So this was another one of these self-betrayal style moralistic religious calls that allows perpetrators to keep perpetrating and the targets to sit there like a shot duck waiting for another hit. When it starts coming out in religion, there's a bit of a stench, I believe, because if one can't read the Bible in allegory, then one's probably just taking it verbatim, and I've never heard of a revised Bible in my life. How the hell do you revise a Bible? And who revised it? You know? A king. Yeah. So all this religious doctrine is a form of self-betrayal by asking Big Daddy to give you a conscience of how to do the right thing. And how have we lost so much how to do the right thing that we need to ask Sky Daddy? You know, isn't it just in us? If we're going religious and we're all part of God, then obviously the doctrine would also be in us. So why do we act so ridiculous and act like we don't understand and we don't know? Because it's self-betrayal and self-abandonment through amnesia and indoctrination of, no, this is the way you do it, now you've got to do it this way, and this is socially acceptable and this is normal, and if you do it that way you'll be seen as mentally ill or rebellious or anarchic, or you can't do that. Well, nobody said that to Salvador Dali or Picasso or Van Gogh. So what are we aiming for here? Secularity of the people, having all been once different colours and different with different languages, now all being told to be the same. For whose convenience? At whose expense and by whose self-betrayal? So essentially the system is parasitic, it's weakening one's autonomy as a village, while dishing out the new and heavier sanctions and laws as to what is now the new normal. There's an interesting one. The new normal as opposed to the old normal. We couldn't even describe what the old normal was. So we're dealing with an anathema, which is now becoming the modern homunculus, the bloody aberration, just termed as new normal. New normal where everything's slowly going to shit as far as the old system goes, and that's on purpose to dissuade people from seeing what the actual system was and why they needed to destroy it, to cover a lot of stuff up so people don't question, so we can just move on, like seems to have been so much of the call over time. Move along, nothing to see here. Bread and wine for the masses at the Colosseum. Come on, grand finals on. Yep, blue or red. Fascinating. Checkers for adults. All under the guise of supposed intelligence, when what they're talking about is the intelligence that intelligences us. If we concede, if we accept. And that's where consent is so much of self-abandonment. Oh, bugger it, I'll just sign the terms and agreement, terms and conditions, you know. It's all consent. It's all just, you know, we'll make it so hard for you that your mind will just give up because we've got more than you can take, and what we're really after here is your conscience, is your sentience, because this is digital slavery on some level, via convenience, via AI tech, and also the levels of information that come out, reams and reams that people get ensconced in, that dilutes either way, regardless. Because once again, even though these masterminds have put out all the information, it doesn't come out because it's leaked. It comes out because they allow it, because they own the internet. We must remember this. And it creates division in society again. Meanwhile, there's something else going on. Information ingression can be a form of self-betrayal and self-abandonment too. It's all very narcissistic, and I'm not hooked on this word or anything like that. I'm not addicted to this notion, even though I've been formed, trained, and liberated from the experience of incarceration from the inside and the outside. The Old Testament God was a wrathful and hateful God. Who wrote that? To me, that sounds like a man-made God who wanted people to comply, or an earthbound God, maybe Yaldabaoth or a Moloch, or what's the other fellow's name? Jabulon. That would be the other one that they love. So I believe that all of this garbage, and pardon me for speaking about religion as garbage, but it's all been touched by man, so it's garbage, manipulated. It's all been formed on a basis of suppression and narcissism, from the suppression of women to the suppression of latent homosexuality throughout time, to especially in the upper ranks, to the bestial acts that certain people will inclined to want to play once they reach a certain point of power. The legal system, in its swaying biases, dependent on how they're regulating and driving society as to how they reinterpret the laws. For instance, giving a woman half the money and 2 children with visiting rights, to me, is a criminal act. Because not only is the man paying for having bred the children, he's now paying to not have them, or woman for this matter, and is treated like a open air jailbird on visiting times, all sequestered by the court, because courts make money off it. More divorces, mate, more money, more single parents, more broken economy. It's a self-supporting principle, as is so much of this stuff, you know. Like, we're going back to paper bags because we're going to save the planet, but everything's in plastic. Everything you take out of that bloody shop in that paper bag is wrapped in plastic. So that's a subtle form of self-betrayal. All this stuff, all this crap. And people are becoming so used to it and so subjugated to it that they become comfortably numb. I think Pink Floyd said something about it. Another brick in the wall. All these people, musicians, foretelling what was going to happen through their connection to the happeners, to the bears of what I say is what happens. And they all get a pretty cruisy ride for their investment in the indoctrination of people as a different class of people, being the dupers, being the contract signers and the agreeers to keep the shh about all of this, because it is a big Truman Show. It's a lot of bullshit. It always has been. And the narrative has been so well played. Well, it all started with trauma, all of it. It all started with, well, will kill your wife and children and take you as a slave, or will kill you, impregnate your wife and steer your children as slaves. This is the way it works, you know. And now we're in a domestic version of that, where everybody is still living in the state of the internal version of living in a bloody favela, in anxiety of what's going to happen without even feeling it. They don't even know. Just get on Instagram and have a bit of a flick and, you know, go and see some friends. And this is part of the problem, is that the totalitarian tiptoe is part of people's amnesia. Part of the dissonance and the dissociation of this can't be real. Oh well, I might as well just get on Instagram and, you know, have another beer and, or, you know, find another way to avoid what seems to be the inevitable by virtue of nobody being able to cohere in consciousness to assert another way. It's like sitting at the movies watching for the next bit to happen. Yeah. Self-betrayal is the onset of amnesia. The moment the child's abused and has to retroflect or genuflect, generally both, they've lost a part of themselves. And that's called good behaviour. It's also called good behaviour when you get out of jail early. Yeah, it's and that's where you'll find so many of these children who've been abused young, dying after a life of mowing their lawns and paying their bills, making sure their shirt was ironed, and that'll be all that's known about that man, that woman. It's because they've been programmed into being good little robots that everybody regards as normal, while they're empty by the program they received early that was supplanted in them so deeply that being good was more important than being alive. And as we've found out with this modern understanding of likes and love, being liked, having a like means nothing. I don't like you, I like what you post. And love, put into that situation, it's another commoditization of love. These little emojis that have replaced real communication, reflection, sharing, because part of the sharing is how we get the information through, and it's also the way we break the self-betrayal of conceding to what is offered as the status quo and forming a normality around it, forming a nuance of this is how we do it. Now look, I've come back into society and I've seen how many ways people do it, and I still do it my way, and I get plenty of weird looks, like, you know, and I look at them and I think, well, who's got more of a view at this point? Yeah? As I go back to using my credit card, and people are like, it's never failed me. You know, tap and wave. Tap and wave. That's pretty much the level that we get to these days. Surface skimming, tapping and waving. Yeah, the dating scene's probably waving and tapping now. Yeah, self-betrayal is not recognising that love is freely given, and if not, it's a form of possession. And real love doesn't come with any question. And when you're in your head a lot around love, it's probably because it's not love, essentially. Because love's meant to bring you back to your body. And so many people out there don't realise it, but what they're trying to do is to return back to their body with their own nuance and understanding of love, which is flawed and fractured because they've come from situations where parents didn't stay together, or it was unhappy, or blah blah blah. And they're working off that principle to understand love, and no different to generations. The more it happens, the less people have a real nuanced understanding of love, because it's just a fractalized version of what was there before, with probably more generational trauma and more opportunities for technology to dissuade one to investigate, because it's easier to look out than it is to look in. And love is the cure for loneliness. And anyone who hasn't really experienced real love will be looking their whole lives until they find it inside. So yeah, this situation we find where the genders are now being flipped, and the programming is for men to be vulnerable, and there's two lots. There's actually two narratives going on there, and there's two narratives going on with women now that I see. And this is just a byproduct of the schism of the abdication from the understanding of real love. Men are like this, women are like this. Well, that's a perfect program for control. And more often than not, the people that say that are the first people who are incapable of self-reflection, because it's a ridiculous stereotype to say that a gender is like this, unless they've all been programmed that way, or the people that are saying that have all been programmed that way. And then you put them both together, you've got Love Island. Yeah, the island of love, where two people get to be together separately, never knowing each other, because they were taught to self-betray. They were taught to listen allocentrically to the propaganda of how to live and how to be. And they believe it, because if they don't do it like everybody else, then they're not going to be called normal. You know, people freak out, women freak out about, I haven't had a child by this stage, and you know, all of these invisible lines that are superimposed by society, by the sense of being left behind. From what? From being normal, from being a herd animal, for not thinking autonomously and deciding that maybe you don't want to have a child. That one. Or maybe you don't want to have a child with someone just because you want to have a child, because it's time. Just the same as a man who marries for vanity is marrying vanity. And the moment he possesses that vanity, he's going to want more vanity, because he's never owned himself. He's only looked outwards for possessions. And conscription is a big part of hubris and vanity. How much can I have? in this life. And that's also a dislocation from conscience, because people become items of transaction over living beings, and this is how we end up in a society with people living in apartments, interesting word, all together but separate, all concretized and off the ground, and so close yet so far away. Yeah, self-betrayal is in a point of action to not act, in a point of feeling truth to swallow it, for fear of judgment. I'll tell you right now, there is no greater judgment than self-judgment, and anyone who suffers the judgment of others more greatly than themselves is already lost in self-betrayal, in a form of amnesia where keeping their environment clean is ensuring everybody else is happy about them. Some of the best conversations come from abrasion, through two people who have goodwill, wanting to make amends and own their part, and also speak wholly their opinion to be wholly right or wrong, or to make adjustment. What I see in all of this is that there's an illusion of choice with a hell of a lot of dictates which have been psychosomatically imposed on people over time through media, through mediocrity. It just spreads mediocrity. That's what it does. It spreads the virus of how to be, and what's going to happen, and what's happened. So it's just a constant programming of, and now we've got a person dressing like this, and now we've got this idiot with the tit hanging out, and why don't we all do it? Why don't we adopt the pants around the bottom of the bum with the undies hanging out, which was actually a gay prison sign, which infiltrated the music industry and then went into society. I'm like, I don't know. Who's running this show? The shit show of the bullshitman. Yeah? The Truman is the bullshitman. In this case, it's all inverted. People have the illusion of freedom, believe they're making their own choices about their own existence, but they're just someone else's choices ticked off by them, without any understanding that they're actually being pulled by the river that they believe they're leading. And everybody's leading, you know? Coming to a point where I watch this Instagram stuff where I see these vacuous comments from women, you know, what would you do on your first date with me? I just think, well, don't even know you. And I don't really live on the nuance of this dreamscape of beautiful is a look, because I've met a lot of pretty people who are disgustingly ugly, filthy people, some of the worst. I'm sort of cured of that one, as I'm not going to let my eyes betray me, betray myself, when the rest of my body's saying something else. And this is where we are getting caught in the visuals a lot. The eyes telling lies and the ears listening and receiving without discernment. All of a sudden it becomes part of your narrative. I see these key words go out and all this sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden everyone's saying it, and the handshakes, and it's just like, and I'll just grab someone by the hand and shake it normally without all the ghetto signs, and it looks like I'm wrecking the party. I'm just bringing it back to normal, or sorry, pardon that word, just bringing it back to not a performance art, meeting up with someone. That's what I shy away from. To have to interview your way into authenticity is really tiring. So I came from the hood, but I don't want to go back there, and I don't want to emulate it in any way, shape or form, be it governmental, environmental, public. No thank you. No, because it's all programming, and I'd rather be disliked and original than liked for being a clone of some algorithm and some mad scientist behind it, steering the psychology of humanity into the banal at the most crucial time that we will see on this earth thus far. So we have to look at this price of all the convenience and how that's a form of self-betrayal, because our time and attention is their energy, and without that none of this would work, and without our consent there wouldn't be the changes that are currently happening, because people are stuck in convenience, avoiding reality in a dissonant want to be liked and loved. I might leave it there. Thanks very much. Have a good day. Love you all. Be well.